Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 188, and that show will review all the comics I read this week in one show, so let's get started. Now, I do have 16 books to review, so that's kind of a low week for me. I've actually had a couple of low weeks, maybe because I've been dropping a couple of books, but let's get started. What was number 16? What was worst pick of the week? And that was Detective Comics issue 954. Really didn't love the artwork here. Very heavy on the inking that you couldn't really enjoy what was going on in the artwork. It just didn't work for me. Just very heavy inks. Here's another example of that. That made it look cartoonish in some ways. It didn't work. Also, the story was kind of boring. There's just a lot of dialogue that didn't really go anywhere, like between Ra's al Ghul and Batman. And nothing really happens in this issue. It's just Batman and Ra's al Ghul having a discussion. We see Batwoman's father let out of his jail cell, and Cassandra's gonna save the day. Like, very small things happen in this issue to say it's worth picking up. So overall, I didn't think this issue was worth picking up. So Detective Comics issue 954 gets 2 stars. Moving on to number 15. And number 15 is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 26. Another issue I feel like that you don't really have to pick up this week. Because really all it is, it's Spider-Man, Silver Sable, and Mockingbird chasing Norman Osborn. And everyone reacting to it. And then Dr. Octopus twirling his mustache and saying, "Yes, everything going according to plan. Parker Industries will burn." And that's pretty much what happens in the issue. And then you have the cliffhanger of Mockingbird and S.H.I.E.L.D. not working with Parker Industries anymore, showing how much of a downward spiral the company is going in. But to make that an interesting cliffhanger, I would have to be interested in Mockingbird being in this series, / I had to be interested in Parker Industries, and I wasn't interested in either storyline. So that's why it just kind of bored me. Not even Norman Osborn could save this. Not even Aunt May and Harry could save this issue for me. So overall, I gave it 2 stars. I just wasn't a fan of this issue, and I don't think a lot really happened here. Moving on to number 14, which is a book I was looking forward to because it's the last issue of Bendis's Guardians of the Galaxy, so my number 14 is Guardians of the Galaxy issue 19. And all it is that Thanos goes to Earth, he wants to destroy it, the Guardians defeat him. That's pretty much it. So I expected more. I wanted this to be more of an emotional issue of the team saying goodbye. There's definitely some emotional beats here, but not enough for a $4.99 book. The artwork changes throughout the story. Not drastically, but you still can see the difference. And it just didn't really feel like a grand finale. Even though I think action-wise it kind of was, but not for as many pages as it was. I didn't need to see Thanos fighting the Guardians for that long. It just kind of got boring after a while. So Guardians of the Galaxy issue 19 gets 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 13, which is Silver Surfer issue 10. And I feel like this is a little lower just because of the inconsistency that this book comes out in. It's always very delayed, so it kind of ruins the flow of the book. And this issue I feel like was kind of a throwaway. It's we get to see Norman go up to a version of Galactus. Galactus is not eating planets, and we see that Dawn and Norrin have to go around the galaxy and go far into the galaxy and then end up meeting each other, and that was the end. Even though it was a cute ending and kind of a corny ending, but it's like, oh, of course we'll always find each other type thing. And I mean, overall the issue is kind of forgettable for me, especially because I'm not a huge cosmic fan, so I didn't personally care about the Galactus appearance as much, but it's cute in its own way. So I'm going to give the issue 3 stars. Also, the artwork I really like overall. Alright, now moving on to number 12, which is a book that was definitely anticipated this week, and that was X-Men Blue issue 1. where I think X-Men Blue fails what X-Men Gold does right. So X-Men Gold, with Kitty being leader, she has these connections with her teammates, and we see that in the first issue. And the nostalgia is just enough. Here, I think the book relies just on nostalgia, and Jean Grey's leader doesn't really shine in this issue, and that's exactly what should have shined. That's exactly what should have been spotlighted, was Jean Grey as leader, because that's the, that's the difference in status quo, is that Jean is leading the X-Men. And even though there's definitely interesting stuff that happened in it, I like that Juggernaut's reaction to Cyclops, because it's been a while since they've seen each other, and Juggernaut's still upset at older Cyclops for killing his brother, Professor Xavier. And then the ending with Magneto is something we've seen before, but also feels different because Magneto's kind of taking over Professor Xavier's spot for this X-Men team. And that's interesting, not because, Magneto's led the X-Men before. That's something we've seen. But what's interesting about it is that this is Professor Xavier's first X-Men teaming up with Magneto, and I find that very interesting. So I did like the ending. There's definitely parts I enjoyed about it, but the team dynamic wasn't there for me, and that's weird because we know these characters very well. They're the first X-Men, but it just wasn't there. They weren't really entertaining. I feel like the dialogue they exchanged was more just to fill up the pages than to actually have a conversation with each other. So, X-Men Blue overall gets 3 stars. It was an okay issue for me. I will get the next issue, see where it goes, but I was disappointed with this issue because I really loved X-Men Gold and was kind of putting it up towards that standard. Alright, moving on to number 11, which is Weapon X, issue 1. So, the other X-Men book that came out. So Weapon X did beat X-Men Blue for me, just because I felt like it was more coherent, the story. I do think that X-Men Blue was trying to do a lot in one issue too. But this issue is interesting because we get to see Old Man Logan team up with Sabretooth against these robots that they can't really sense are robots. They sense them as normal people, and it's all part of the new Weapon X, I guess. But I will say there's a lot of slow parts, so it's a very slow book, which is why it's down on my list a bit more, and why I only give it 3 stars, because it's really slow. Greg Land's artwork could definitely be exaggerated sometimes with the smiles, and a lot of times the characters are closing their eyes. So that's a nitpick, but I will say his style fits this book a little bit more. Like everything else besides the facial expressions are good. It's just the facial expressions that need work. So Weapon X overall gets 3 stars. Not a bad issue, but not a totally interesting issue either. So I'm going to give it 3 stars and probably give the next issue a try. So definitely not enough not to get the next issue, but at the same time not getting me excited for the next issue. Alright, moving on to number 10, which is Copperhead, and I dropped one of my books, which is Copperhead issue 12. And I really like the new art style for this book. I think that's been a big improvement for the book. Here we go. Really showing those facial expressions well and kind of this out-of-the-world type setting that they have. But what's interesting is learning a little bit more about our main character, and she is put into a situation where her deputy has now become mayor, and she doesn't really like this guy that much, and you see the workplace problems, and then she ends up quitting her job by the end of the issue. And we learned a little bit maybe about her son's father, so we get a little more information about her. So, it's a slow-paced issue still, because I feel like it takes more of a television format the way it goes. It's very much slow burn character interactions, and I don't see the overall story arc, how many issues it's going to be. I feel like you're just kind of seeing it as a series, which could be a positive and negative for a comic book. So Copperhead issue 12 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 9, which is Motor Crush issue 5, which is the last issue before we go on hiatus. So we're going to have like a 3-month hiatus and then come back in August for the next book. So more than 3 months. So we have the book back in August. But I like this issue. I'm still not completely connected to the world, so that's why it's not as high up. But It's cool where our main character goes by the end of the issue that she misses 2 years of her life because she's trying to figure out more about her past. So because she's looking so much into her past, it means that she's kind of missing the present a lot. So I like them digging into the mythology a bit more. I do feel like that's interesting, but I want a little bit more from the series. So Motor Crush issue 5 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 8, which is Rose. Why do these books keep falling? Alright, Rose issue 1, and I like this book. I'm not a huge fantasy fan, so I think that's why it's not really my top 5, but I thought it was a pretty good start. We get to learn about the characters, we get to learn about the world. It's very much a world-setting book, but definitely gets me interested in the next issue, and the artwork is gorgeous for this book. And the color palette, love the color palette, so it definitely gets me into wanting to get the next issue. So Rose issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 7, which is a book I actually randomly got just because of the cover pretty much, and that was The Flash, issue 20. Also because we're getting into the Button storyline anyways, I'm like, alright, I'll just pick up this issue. And I was pleasantly surprised by it. I enjoyed it. I love it? No, but I still don't love the art for this book. But I liked Iris's point of view in this issue. That really made it for me. And I liked that she was kind of the hero of the story as she's trying to figure out what's going on with her nephews. So I liked it. I thought it was cool. You get a little twist of where the storyline's going. And I dropped this book a while ago, and I understood the twist. So obviously the story has not progressed very much, but you see a character that was in the beginning of the series come again, and kind of puts the twist into the story that we all thought of Godspeed. So it was interesting. I don't know if it gave me enough to want to continue the series, but I liked it as an issue. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and that was number 7. Moving on to number 6, people are going to be shocked by this, but also this was kind of a mediocre week for me, so that's why it's a bit higher, but Supergirl issue 8 gets number 6. So Supergirl, I liked the story a bit more here. I didn't love the story, but I liked it because of Superman. I liked Kara's connection to Superman. Still don't really like the artwork. The triangle-y type art style was not my favorite, but I liked her interactions with John, with Lois, and her learning a bit about Superman Reborn, which maybe will change her character a little bit, which would be nice. But the Batgirl scenes were a little creepy, because there's Batgirl just like watching. There I am, I'm watching you, Supergirl. I'm watching you. With her binoculars. It just kind of came off weird. And I read the annual. The annual was really good. They already met each other. So it's kind of strange to see her just like watching her. There's also Supergirl who encounters Batgirl in that annual. So that was a little weird. So either way, I think they could have weaved in Batgirl's story a little bit better. But I liked it. I liked this a bit more. I saw a bit more of Kara here. So I'm going to give this issue 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 5, which is Titans, issue 10. And I like the story overall. I do feel like it's kind of fillerish because we're going into the Deathstroke story, the Lazarus contract. But really liked Karen here. Karen forgets her memories of her child and Malcolm by the end. And she just beats up the 5 villains they have to beat up, and it was really fun, and it was just a team kind of working together. It feels a bit cluttered in the beginning. It's like, alright, this is just an action issue, but once Karen gets into the issue, it gets very interesting, like I said, and it gives you a little teaser for what's to come with the Lazarus contract. So, Titans issue 10 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 4, which is Action Comics issue 977. Which in another week I don't think would have been my top 5, but like I said, it was kind of a mediocre week for me this week. So number 4 was Action Comics, and I love the beginning. That's something I really liked about this issue, and the artwork. Really liked the artwork. Kind of wish that Superman would steal this this style of artwork. Love it. But I love that Lois and Clark are getting back to their old lives and their lives are changing, but they're also forgetting what their other lives were when they were the Whites. Now they are officially the Kents. They are both working together again, so it's patching back the universe, and it's Superman feeling that there's something missing because, of course, of what happened during Superman Reborn and DC Rebirth as a whole. So it's a very interesting story, but why it's not as high as I wanted it to be, half the issue is just restating what Superman's origins is, with not a lot of tweaks to his origins. So I did not think that was very necessary. There's just a lot of exposition of, oh, I remember that. That's cool. Oh, yeah, I'm born. Oh, I'm going back to Earth. That's cool. Or, I'm going to Earth. That's cool. So it's just like Superman commentating on a story that we've seen a billion times. So that portion of the issue definitely brought it down for me. But Action Comics issue 977 gets 3.5 stars. Alright, so we're moving on to number 3. Which is Wonder Woman, issue 20. And I thought this was a solid issue. I like Veronica Cale as a villain. You definitely understand her motives. She wants her daughter to be alive again. Even though her daughter's breathing and healthy, she can't move. She can't, well, I don't know if she can't move, but she can't talk. She can't eat, but somehow she's still alive. So she's figuring out every way in Greek mythology how to revive her, even if it means backstabbing Wonder Woman. And that's the big issue. And now she has to let out Ares, and she doesn't care. She just wants to save her daughter. So I like that we get to see her motives. I thought the story was, slow-paced. There's not a lot of Wonder Woman if you're looking for her, but it's a solid book with beautiful artwork, really great facial expressions, and we get examples of that here. So Wonder Woman issue 20 for me gets 4 stars. Moving on to number 2, which is Batgirl and the Birds of Prey issue 9. And this was a solid book. I liked it. Going into Dinah's story, learning a little bit more about her meta powers, but at the same time being undercover, trying to figure out what this villain is doing. And we find out the villain is stealing Meta's abilities. And now Dinah is under her control because she stole Meta's ability who could do mind control. So really interesting issue in that regard. So if you're a big Dinah fan, I think you'll like it. Artwork, I think it's still a little bit dark in tone. I feel like I wish it was a little lighter. But overall, I thought it was a solid issue. So I'm going to give Batgirl and the Birds of Prey issue 9 4 stars. And that's number 2. Moving on to number 1, which was by far my favorite issue of the week. And that was the Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue 6. I really like this issue. Now, I have a couple of nitpicks. It's a solid 4, so there is a couple of nitpicks. Like, some of the wording was kind of weird in the beginning of the issue. Like with Peter just saying, I'm going to strangle you, Mary Jane, and then he's kissing her was really awkward, in my opinion. I didn't think that joke really, flew. I didn't think it was a great joke, but also, Professor Xavier showing up at the party, I kind of wish they showed that was, happening through his abilities. I think they could have showed that a little bit better because it just looks like he's showing up to the party where J. Jonah Jameson is. So, it's a little strange there. But that's honestly the only nitpicks I have. The rest of the issue is really good. It's a good team up, and what I like is it deals with the Parker family stuff where Mary Jane doesn't want to let go of Annie, because that's her daughter, and she doesn't want to let go of her, and trying to compare her abilities, or Annie's abilities, to mutants, and that was really interesting to me. I've seen it before done in comics, but it's not done very often, where you compare a mutant's ability to a superhero. Why in the Marvel Universe, why do civilians love superheroes but not mutants? Like, what's the difference? So I like that. It's something that SpiderGirl has also tackled. I feel like I always meant the SpiderGirl because this is a very similar series to that title, but it's definitely something SpiderGirl has tackled in the past. But I like this issue a lot because we also have Annie's abilities of I have something in my eye, of her premonitions being used for the wrong reasons, which was Magneto, which was really cool, because someone else might be using Cerebro. And then you have Jubilee being a traitor, which out of any of the X-Men, I believe Jubilee would do that. So I was like, alright, that wasn't a surprise, but I'm excited to see where that goes. So it's a really interesting team up with a cool plot, but at the same time, there's a lot of good emotions in this issue too. So overall, I'm going to give this a solid 4 stars. Again, by far my pick of the week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. Let me know in the comments below what was your best pick of the week, what was your worst pick of the week, and everything in between. And of course, I'll have a new episode for Comic episode next week. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.